did too. So that was good for me. How else do we get cortisol down? Sleep deprivation, less than 6 to 7 hours a night, shift work, or an untreated sleep apnea. All of these increase cortisol level, they increase fat storage, and more inclined to lose and break down muscle. So one study showed that patients who had 8 hours of sleep and followed a calorie-restricted diet lost twice as much weight than compared to someone who only had 5.5 hours. Get some sleep to lose weight. All right, that's easy enough. So I mentioned sleep apnea. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the term, the diagnosis of sleep apnea. I like to scare patients and tell them that sleep apnea is slowly suffocating to death because what happens with sleep apnea is that your oxygen levels start to drop below 90. And we need our oxygen to maintain a certain range. So we are oxygenating all of our vital organs, our brain, our heart, our kidney, our liver. And if we are snoring, right, snoring is a very good indication that you may have sleep apnea. This is the scoring tool that I like to use in the office. There's this one, it's called a stop bang. And then there's another scoring tool called the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, but some of the questions are so weird on it that I just don't use it. It says, how likely are you to fall asleep while you're talking to somebody? And I'm just like, I hope nobody falls asleep while they're talking to me, you know, sleep apnea. But do you snore? Do you feel tired when you wake up after a full night's rest? Do you have high blood pressure? Is your BMI over 35? Are you over 50 and male? Can't do anything about that, right? But if you answered yes to 3 of those, then you might have undiagnosed, untreated sleep apnea, which is very, very dangerous. It promotes weight gain, right? Because you're not sleeping well. You're not perfusing your vital organs with oxygenated blood, which we need. And it's a vicious circle. So untreated sleep apnea drives weight gain makes the sleep apnea worse, and if we target the sleep apnea, then maybe the weight loss will be easier, and then eventually come off the CPAP. Nobody wants a CPAP machine, I get it. It seems very clunky and claustrophobic, but it might be necessary to fix the root cause, and then you get rid of the machine. So please talk to your doctor about it. It's very dangerous. Get good sleep. Decrease cortisol. Get good sleep. Stress drives visceral. Visceral drives insulin. Insulin drives food intake and weight. TikTok time. Or tic-tac, like maybe they call it. Tic-tac. Decrease hunger. How do we get this ghrelin gremlin to calm down? Foods high in protein, fat, and fiber reduce hunger, ghrelin, and increase fullness. Satiety hormones, fullness hormones, respond to protein, fat, and fiber. They do not respond to carbohydrates. Protein, fat, and fiber-rich foods do not raise insulin. Remember that graph? I think I included it later on, but I always think of that graph, that really large spike in insulin and glucose is the carbs, the moderate spike is the protein, and the barely blip on the radar is fat. It's why keto diet works so well for people, but it's not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable for most people. Protein, fat, and fiber, oh yeah, I just said that. So carbohydrates cause a spike in insulin and sugar and cause a crashing feeling 30 minutes later. which will make you hungry sooner, right? So we're tired and we're hungry 30 minutes later. And we're overeating it because it's not triggering our satiety hormones at all. Nighttime snacking or binging is an indication of severe insulin resistance. So make sure that every meal is high in protein, fat, and fiber. I like this. This cracked me up. Decrease ghrelin. Eat fiber, protein, and fat. Oh, sleep's coming up again. Sleep deprivation, less to 6 to 7 hours, shift work, or an untreated sleep apnea, increases stress and increases hunger. I know that if I don't sleep well or sleep enough, I know I'm snacking throughout the day because I'm exhausted, and it's my hormones, my stress hormone and my hunger hormone, that are making me eat. Increases fat storage, more inclined to lose or break down muscle, which we do not want. And studies have shown that sleep deprivation chronically resulted in an intake of an extra almost 400 calories a day. So don't start your day tired, stressed, and hungry. Get good sleep. I'm going to graze over this. We'll talk more about fasting, time-restricted eating in a minute, but just wanted to show that hunger hormone, ghrelin, does tend to decrease over time, and the little blips that you see here are around conditioned meal times. We're conditioned to be hungry at mealtime. That's why kids aren't often hungry at mealtimes. They haven't conditioned themselves to have these increases around mealtimes. But again, over time, during a period of fasting, your hunger doesn't just skyrocket. It actually, you'll have the little blips, the waves will come and go, and then will slowly decrease. Skip meals. Skip meals. We're going to go into insulin now. So remember, we eat food, all foods trigger insulin. We make insulin, cells resist insulin, sugar is stored as fat, feel tired and hungry. We eat more food, we make more insulin, cells start to resist insulin, sugar is stored as fat, feel tired and hungry. We eat more food. So this is our, not just sugar, right? Not just carbohydrates, all food energy is trying to be moved into the cell. And the insulin is the key that unlocks the cell. So if we are resistant to insulin, our key is broken, and that energy can't move into the cell. So we're tired and hungry. How do we decrease insulin? Eliminate foods that trigger high levels of insulin, like added sugar. Remember that term, refined or processed carbohydrates, those white foods, white flour, white pasta, white bread, white rice, white potatoes. Fiber delays the intestine's ability to absorb glucose and fructose. So low and slow rise in glucose reduces the amount of insulin. That's why, so fruit has naturally occurring fructose, that's the sugar found in fruit, but it also has fiber. So when you eat it, instead of drink it, you have the fiber benefit that's going to delay the absorption of glucose. So that's why fruit is encouraged. Fruit juice, not good. Foods containing protein and fat do not spike glucose and insulin as much as compared to carbohydrates, which you can see here. How do we decrease insulin? Stop drinking soda and fruit juice and artificially sweetened drinks, because we know that they trigger insulin, and the one goal in weight loss is getting the insulin levels down. So for beverages, water, milk, non-GMO flavored club soda, and brewed tea. Another way to decrease insulin, eliminate sugar and simple carbs, simple, refined, processed, white foods, however you want to call them. Eat protein, eat fat, and eat fiber. They're going to keep you fuller longer. You're not going to have that spike and then crashing feeling, being hungry an hour later, if your meals are focused on protein, fat, and fiber. Another way to improve insulin or decrease the resistance to this hormone so we can effectively use food as energy, which it's made to do, right? We need food to give us energy. So with physical activity, remember I said that physical activity is important for a lot of things. A lot of these hormones we're talking about, lowering cortisol, stress, and also it increases insulin sensitivity. So skeletal muscles, which are most abundant in our body, right? We have a lot of skeletal muscle in comparison to everything else. That means our skeletal muscles are better able to use available insulin to take up glucose, energy, during and after activity. So no matter your age, weight, or level of fitness, studies have shown that physical activity improves sensitivity to insulin in just 1 week without weight loss. So this might make it easier, right? This might make it easier to lose weight. Get physical activity, decrease your insulin resistance. I love this analogy. So I describe our liver as the fridge, right? It's easy to get energy in and out of the fridge or food, right? Our fat storage is the basement freezer. It's really hard to get to. It's down a flight of sketchy stairs. It's dark down there. It's cold. Maybe it's locked up. Spiders, yeah, spiders, right? So our liver, being our fridge, easy to get calories in and out of, right? This is why we don't die in the middle of the night, is because our liver stores energy or food, glucose, however you want to think about it. And the liver is able to make energy or glucose when we're sleeping so we don't die, which is nice, right? Our body fat is a basement freezer. It's harder to access and it stores excess energy. The key that unlocks the freezer is low insulin levels. So when we're in a high insulin state or an insulin resistant state, we continue or stay in fat storing mode. And when you're in a low insulin state, we are in fat burning mode. You can't be in both, right? You can't be in fat storing mode and fat burning mode at the same time. You're one or the other. So we have to let insulin levels fall so we can access the basement freezer. If insulin stays high, our body will continue to store fat instead of burning it. We'll never unlock the basement freezer if we continue stocking the fridge. So what happens when you're doing the small frequent meals during the day? You're stocking your liver, you're stocking your fridge, right? You have to empty the fridge before you can get into the freezer. And that takes about 12 hours to deplete your energy stores or to empty your fridge, 12 hours before you can start getting into the freezer. A recent study suggests that 75% of the weight loss response in obesity is predicted by insulin levels. It has nothing to do with willpower, right? It has nothing to do with calories, not peer support, peer pressure, not exercise, just insulin. How many have heard frequent meals keep the metabolism up? Eat breakfast to jumpstart your metabolism. Yeah. We have so much access to food with processed foods. It's always available. We don't have to store it in the fridge anymore because they're shelf stable. It's on purpose so they can sell more products, right? They don't spoil. And again, easy to grab and go. They're packaged. The frequent snacking every couple hours keeps us in this high insulin state. We're never allowing those insulin levels to fall. So I like to think about insulin resistance like antibiotic resistance. So what happens when we frequently use the same antibiotic to treat an infection? Antibiotic stops working because the bacteria is now resistant to it. So the only way to reverse that is to stop exposing it to the antibiotic. We stop using it for a while, or we use a different one. Same concept can be applied to insulin resistance. So the more frequently we expose the cells to insulin, small frequent meals throughout the day, the more resistant to insulin we become. Repeat exposure causes the resistance. How do we decrease insulin? Stop snacking between meals. A good rule of thumb is to try to eat your meals within an hour, right? So that's like if you're going to have dinner and you're going to have a sweet treat, a healthy sweet treat, and we'll show you some healthy recipes that are they're just as good as the fake stuff. But if you're going to have the dinner and then the snack after, or the dinner and the sweet treat, try to do it within an hour. Because if you have your dinner and then an hour later you have a snack and an hour later you have another snack and then you go to bed, again, you're staying in a hot fat storing mode, right? Insulin, high levels of insulin, you're just staying right there. You're going to hang out in a high insulin state if you continue to expose yourself. You never allow those insulin levels to go down. Another good rule of thumb is to wait at least 4 hours between meals. I think it takes at least 2 hours for insulin levels to fall, but then if you eat 2 hours later, then you're whoop, right back where you started. So if you allow at least 4 hours between meals without snacking, no artificial sweeteners during, in between meal times, you're really giving the insulin a chance to decrease. I hope these are helpful. And move more. Calorie restriction and exercise. What we have been telling people for years. Just eat less and move more. That's it. That's all you have to do. Unfortunately, we know time and time again, all of the studies have shown that weight is regained. Patients may lose weight initially. They may keep it off for a couple years, but 50% is regained in 2 years and 80% is regained in 5, and who knows what happens at 7. But I don't know if anybody is familiar with The Biggest Loser, but it was a TV show. All the patients were put on a very restricted diet, very controlled environment. They were working out or doing physical activity like 4 hours a day, probably more than that, and they lost significant weight. So that should show that it works, right? But they weren't able to maintain it. And a lot of these contestants, they really wanted to maintain their weight loss, and they continued the eating plan, they continued the physical activity. But what happened? If this is true, and let's say that I usually burn 2,000 calories a day, and I reduce my calories to 1,000 calories a day, I should disappear in a few years, right? Right? Because if calorie restriction results in weight loss, then right? If I keep going with it, then I'll just, but that's not true, right? The body compensates. These are the reasons why that calorie restriction doesn't work. Metabolism. So metabolism is what the body does at rest and how many calories it burns, just doing its thing. Our respiratory, our breathing, our heart rate, our circulation, our digestion, that's where the majority of our calories are burned, is just, it's not what we're doing day to day in our activity level, it's our metabolic rate. That's the huge bulk of the calories that we use in a day. So when we reduce our calories, our metabolism is like, oh, okay, you're only going to feed me 1,000 calories, well guess what? I only need 1,000 calories now. So I'm going to slow everything down. And I don't know how many of you have been on a diet, but I'm sure you felt cold, tired, and hungry, right? Because that's the circulation slowing down, right? Ghrelin, hunger increases, And leptin, the thermostat, when we lose weight, remember that's the signal for the brain to, we tell the brain, hey, eat more, move less. There we go. So 3 reasons why eat less and move more fails. Metabolism drops to meet the reduction in calories. I've heard it even drops lower than the reduction in calories. So that's why people plateau, they regain the weight and they almost gain back more than previously because their hunger increases and their metabolism is in the toilet. So women who have been on a calorie-restricted diet their whole life most likely have a very, very low metabolism, right? Because the body is so adjusted to that reduction in calories. So if we follow a calorie-restricted diet, but our insulin remains high, so you go on a diet and you're like, okay, I'm going to reduce my calories by 1,000, I'm going to eat 1,000 calories a day, I'm just going to have little snacks throughout the day, and that will keep me not wanting to kill anybody, I'm just going to eat every hour, every couple hours, and I'll just have something small, and I'll make sure make sure it's sugar-free and high in protein, and unfortunately, it doesn't work. If we follow the calorie-restricted diet, and we constantly expose ourselves to insulin, and we're in a high insulin state, and we're resistant, we're in fat storing mode, remember? So the metabolism decreases to adjust to the decrease in calories, and that's the plateau in weight regain and the yo-yo diet. Talked a little bit about fasting earlier and kind of spacing out meal times, not snacking between meals, eating within that hour. And this is why, this is the science behind it. I am getting all my patients who are on weight loss medications started on intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating because I truly want to fix the hormonal dysfunction. I don't want to keep adding meds. I don't want to keep changing meds. I don't want to let Big Pharma win. I know that Big Pharma is going to come out with a new fancy drug. Once Ozempic fails, once Mounjaro fails, I'm sure some of you have heard of some of these injectables, but I really want to fix what's going on, right? And if we can decrease insulin and we can decrease hunger and we can increase the metabolic rate, which is the opposite of a calorie-restricted diet, then maybe we can fix the hormonal dysfunction, right? Maybe we can fix the root cause for weight gain. So time-restricted eating just means that you eat within a certain time frame, just kind of like how our grandparents ate. They didn't have access to all these processed foods that are just around all the time in our grocery stores, on the kitchen counter. They had exactly what they were going to have for breakfast, they had exactly what they're going to have for lunch, and exactly what they're going to have for dinner, and that's it. If you didn't eat enough at dinner, then too bad, right? So it's just limiting this is not drastic or crazy to do, but you just eat within 8 hours. You can do your breakfast, lunch, dinner within an 8-hour period. You cannot allow 4 hours between meals, right? And then you fast the other 16. Most of that is spent sleeping, so you push back your morning meal a little later in the day. So what does an 8-hour window look like? 10 to 6, or a little later in the day. Ghrelin, our hunger hormone, is naturally lowest around 9 a.m. for most people. We're already in a fasting state overnight when we're sleeping. You can eat around 12 and 12 to 8. If that works better for your schedule or you're working late nights. That's usually what I tend to do because I work a little later. Figure out what works for you. Benefits include improvements in sleep, overweight and weight and obesity, blood glucose regulation, cardiac function, and gut health. And there's evidence that time-restricted eating may promote longevity and have cancer-fighting effects because you're allowing the body to naturally do what it should be doing, right? Which is clearing out debris. There's a process called autophagy. Yeah, anyways. But if you are not allowing your body to rest and digest and turn over and make new cells, then that is giving cancer and malignant cells time to grow. It's easy to follow, it's free, and it saves time. right? If you're skipping meals, you don't have to prepare anything. You don't have to buy food for whatever meal you're deciding to skip that day. You don't have to prepare it. Remember that ghrelin decreases during fasting. Okay, so I just want to take a moment. If you're on diabetic medication, if you're on blood pressure medication, I want you to be safe about this because your blood pressure and your blood sugar will decrease during fasting, which is the goal, right? We want those things to go down. But if you're on medication and you're trying to incorporate fasting, it can be pretty dangerous. You can have a drop in blood pressure, which can cause a syncopal event, meaning you pass out. If you're on a medication that causes low blood sugar, you can go into a coma, which is really dangerous. So do not engage in a period of fast. 8-hour window is fine. That just means that you're not eating all day, every day, right? 12, 16 hours, however long you're awake. But if you do skip a meal, right, you just want to be smart about it. So just make sure you talk to your doctor about it. Be prepared to be met with some resistance, right? This isn't common practice. This isn't a recommendation you hear all the time for a provider to say, hey, skip meals every now and again. But I'm trying to do something here. I'm trying to decrease insulin and resistance, and this is how we go about it. So be safe. Please talk to your doctor. Make sure you hold medication or lower it before you engage in a fast. Decrease insulin, skip meals. So some of my patients, they're already not snacking. They're having their 3 meals a day. They do breakfast, lunch, dinner, 4 hours in between. They're eating whole foods. They're trying to avoid the white foods and processed foods. And some of them will skip breakfast and just have lunch and dinner. And that's, again, it's not too controversial. It's just having the 2 meals, allowing a longer fasting period, right, between meals, and then allowing more time. So you could still do the 8-hour window, but just have lunch around noon and dinner around 8. And you're still within your 8-hour fasting period. Again, you're just allowing those insulin levels to go down. Or if you prefer to eat a little earlier, you can have breakfast around mid-morning and then have an early dinner. And then that's your 8-hour period, and you have 2 meals within the 8-hour period. And it's not too, it's an adjustment. It's an adjustment if you've been following the terrible advice that we've been giving. Here's a motivational tool. I love a SMART goal. What do you really want? It's more than a number on the scale. It's what we really want. You know, we want people to feel better, have more energy, be around for grandchildren, like whatever your goal is. Get specific about it. Do you want to walk the turkey trot next year with your grandchild? Do you want to climb Mount Katahdin in a couple of years? Right? Pick something that you really want to do, right? And it doesn't have to be about physical activity. It could be, I want to meet BMI criteria for a knee replacement. You know, like what is connected to your values? What's important to you? Make it measurable. How are you going to measure it? So you pick a specific goal. I want to walk the turkey trot with my granddaughter next year in November of 2024. I am going to measure my success by checking in with an accountability partner 3 times a week and walking 30 minutes. And that's how I'm going to measure my success in meeting the goal that's so important to me. And write it down. Say, I will walk the turkey trot, next year with my granddaughter, and I'm going to feel so grateful and proud of myself when I do it. And picture how that's going to feel. Make sure it's attainable for you. So if you got bad knees, don't say you're going to run a marathon. Okay? Pick something that's realistic, relevant to your goals and your values, and it's time-based. Because if we just say, I'm going to try to eat better and be more active, well, that's very whimsical, but like how are you going to get there? How are you going to do it? And that's why it's important to be specific about it. What exactly do you want? And how are you going to get there? How are you going to measure it? And set a time limit for yourself. And think positive that you're going to get it. You're going to get there. Ooh, reward yourself with a non-food reward, right? Buy a new dress. Like, get a massage, go get a manicure, whatever that is, you know, do something that is not correlated with food. There's free monitoring tools. I love these apps. I use them all the time. Lose It, Yuka, and the scale Renfo that I talked about earlier. So this is the Renfo scale for $20-ish on Amazon. It can help you figure out your visceral number. We'll try to do as many as we can today. I don't know how much time we have because it takes a lot of data entry, but I think Mindy is going to be helping out with some visceral numbers. So again, this is the real number when we're talking about health that we want to get under 10. Okay, we're not worried about BMI or weight. We want to make sure you maintain muscle mass during weight loss. Super important. You don't want to be losing muscle in this process. Why I recommend it: most accurate indicator of health, track visceral and subcutaneous, feedback to let you know if you're on track to reach your goals. If you start to lose muscle, what do I gotta do? Do I have to increase my protein intake? Do I have to do a little more physical activity? If I am losing weight and I'm losing visceral, perfect, I'm on track, I'm gonna keep going. If I'm not and I'm gaining, what did I do last week? How can I make this week better? You know, don't let it derail you. This is not the enemy. This is like a feedback tool. It's gonna help you stay on track, stay motivated, make adjustments, fine tune what you're doing to reach your goals. Lose It app. I always tell my patients, just start tracking. There's so much power in bringing mindfulness to food choices. There's a barcode here that you can scan your items. It's free. Your commonly searched foods are here. There's a huge inventory. You don't have to be, well, how many grams of protein? Like, you can just search the foods that you're having here, and more than likely somebody has already done the data entry for you, which is nice. And put how much you're having. Serving of meat is about your palm, so 3 ounces is a palm. So if I had 2 palms, that's 6 ounces, so whatever. And you can build recipes. So this is an oat cookie recipe that Andrea has done many batches of. And this is why I recommend it. It's free, there's a large inventory. Just bring mindfulness to how much protein, fat, and fiber. Every food item or meal, look at it and say, is this going to make me feel satisfied? Am I going to be tired and hungry an hour later because it was just white, or it was just carbs? Is there protein, fat, and fiber in here that's going to keep me satisfied, keep me full, provide nutrients? Is this food going to give me cancer? You know, that's a hard question to ask. And this is amazing. Anthony helped me, discover this app. This is the Yuka app. So for these processed foods, you can start scanning them, right? And some are better than others. You can see that the goldfish got a 2 out of 100. This was one of the pharmacist snacks at work. And she's like, that was my healthy snack. Oh, you know? But what makes it unhealthy is the additives, okay? And so excess phosphorus can increase risk for cardiovascular disease, bone mineralization, osteoporosis, osteopenia, and affect the kidneys. This one is in the pretzels. Glutamate is believed to play a role in the development of neurodegenerative and autoimmune disorders, so dementia, Alzheimer's, right? And that's in our pretzels, right? I don't know if I'd pick up the pretzels if I knew that information.
Yeah, right.
So again, you just hit this barcode, you scan the food item, it'll give you a rating and why they say it's bad for you. If you see sodium come up and you see saturated fat come up, but none of these other like additives, and calories. So saturated fat, sodium, calories, don't worry about those, okay? If they score it low because it has saturated fat, calories, or sodium, less concerned than I am about the additives, okay? There's conflicting evidence on like, what's too much salt, right? And I don't have a presentation on that, and I don't have it included, but I am much less concerned about salt, calories, and saturated fat than I am about these toxic chemicals, okay? Why I recommend Yuka, it's free, easy to use. We're just want to be mindful of the foods that we're choosing, right? Read labels. It can help prevent cancer, neurodegenerative disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and weight gain. Okay, we're at the end. Okay, key points. Avoid sugar and fructose. Avoid artificial sweeteners the best you can. Avoid processed foods, aka cigarettes, right? Avoid processed carbs, refined carbs, white foods, white flour, white pasta, white bread, white rice, white potatoes. Eat whole foods. Whole foods don't need an ingredient label, right? So it's fish, haddock, chicken, spinach, right? And then you put them all together and make a really nice recipe, right? And it tastes good. Fat, fiber, protein. Every meal, just look at foods and be like, how much fat, fiber, and protein is in this? And you can use that Lose It app, start entering the food items, and you can, I'll help show a few people, but you can see how much nutrient content is in each meal. Get good sleep, physical activity, like brushing your teeth, it's good for you. Do it. Meditation, prayer to reduce stress, right? Stop snacking between meals and maybe try to skip a meal here and there. Yeah. A lot of what you learned today, I learned from my teachers. Dr. Fung's an endocrinologist. He specializes in diabetes and with weight, and this is an incredible book, The Obesity Code. He co-authored a book called Life in the Fasting Lane. These two women have struggled with weight their whole lives, multiple bariatric surgeries that have failed, and found freedom through intermittent fasting. Again, I just want everybody to be safe and mindful about it if you're on meds. And Fat Champs, another really great book. He is another endocrinologist. And just kind of how we got here. You know, how we got here, what causes it, and this is another good read. And I brought some of the books up here too. I think there's one called Always Hungry I just started. That's going to be a good one. And then another fasting book. But in conclusion, be kind to yourself, please. Negative thoughts will come up. Just let them come up and let go and keep moving forward. Okay, don't let a bad thought derail your whole day. Don't let a pound on the scale derail your progress. This is not a fad diet. This is health. This is nutrition. This is lifestyle, okay? Change is really uncomfortable and challenging, and it doesn't happen overnight. Don't let perfect get in the way of good and better, right? So I know there was a lot in the beginning about some of these foods that are in the stores, and it's going to take time, right? But mindfulness and being kind to yourself, it's a lifestyle change, but I promise you will feel better. And I hope that you feel empowered to move toward a happier, healthy, and vibrant life. And please let Mindy and I know if we can help in any way. There's some cards out back with my Facebook group that I share a lot of information on, and my TikTok. I'll leave the screen up here. I do have some references. I didn't make this up. Okay. Does anyone have any questions at all? You can grab me privately afterwards. All right, no questions then. Great. I
So
did a good job.
amazing, Sarah.
Oh,
That's so good. So we do have healthy snacks, and they have fat, fiber, and fat. No, they have fat, fiber, and protein. Yes, and so, what's that? I hope you've had 4 hours. We know you've had at least 2. So your
We'll make
insulin levels
changes
are down.
after.
Right. Yeah. We'll start 4 hours after the snack.
Yeah.
So we have some drawings though to do, and if you came in and you didn't get a chance to get a handout or sign up for, if you're interested in email of recipes, or did anybody not get in the drawings yet? Because we're gonna draw before we break. Tracy, you want me to put you in?
Yeah, I don't.